Mrs. Miniver is a 1942 American romantic war drama film directed by William Wyler, and starring Greer Garson and Walter Pidgeon. Based on the 1940 novel Mrs. Miniver by Jan Struther, the film shows how the life of an unassuming British housewife in rural England is touched by World War II. She sees her eldest son go to war, finds herself confronting a German pilot who has parachuted into her idyllic village while her husband is participating in the Dunkirk evacuation, and loses her daughter-in-law as a casualty. Produced and distributed by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, the film features a strong supporting cast that includes Teresa Wright, Dame May Whitty, Reginald Owen, Henry Travers, Richard Ney and Henry Wilcoxon. Mrs. Miniver won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, and Best Supporting Actress. In 1950, a film sequel, The Miniver Story, was made with Greer Garson and Walter Pidgeon reprising their roles. In 2006, the film was ranked number 40 on the American Film Institute's list celebrating the most inspirational films of all time. In 2009, the film was named to the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically or aesthetically significant and will be preserved for all time. Plot: Kay Miniver and her family live a comfortable life at a house called Starlings in Belem, a fictional village outside London. The house has a large garden, with a private landing stage on the River Thames at which is moored a motorboat belonging to her devoted husband Clem, a successful architect. They have 3 children, the youngsters Toby and Judy, and an older son Van, a student at a university. They have live-in staff: Gladys the housemaid and Ada the cook. As World War II looms, Van returns from the university and meets Carol Belden, granddaughter of Lady Belden from nearby Belden Hall. Despite initial disagreements, mainly contrasting Van's idealistic attitude to class differences with Carol's practical altruism, they fall in love. Van proposes to Carol in front of his family at home, after his younger brother prods him to give a less romantic, but more honest, proposal. As the war comes closer to home, Van feels he must do his bit, and enlists in the Royal Air Force, qualifying as a fighter pilot. He is posted to a base near to his parents' home and is able to signal his safe return from operations to his parents by cutting his engines briefly. As he flies over the house, together with other boat owners, Clem volunteers to take his motorboat to assist in the Dunkirk evacuation. Early one morning, Kay, unable to sleep as Clem is still away, wanders down to the landing stage. She is startled to discover a wounded German pilot hiding in her garden, and he takes her at gunpoint, demanding food and a coat. The pilot aggressively asserts that the Third Reich will mercilessly overcome its enemies. She feeds him, calmly disarms him when he collapses, and then calls the police. Soon after, Clem returns home, exhausted, from Dunkirk. Lady Belden visits Kay to try and convince her to talk Van out of marrying Carol on account of her granddaughter's comparative youth. Kay reminds her that she, too, was young when she married her late husband. Lady Belden concedes defeat and realizes that she would be foolish to try to stop the marriage. Van and Carol are married. Carol has now also become Mrs. Miniver, and they return from their honeymoon in Scotland. A key theme is that she knows he is likely to be killed in action, but the short love will fill her life. Later, Kay and her family take refuge in their Anderson shelter in the garden during an air raid, and attempt to keep their minds off the frightening bombing by reading Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which Clem refers to as a lovely story. As they barely survive as a bomb destroys parts of the house, they take the damage with nonchalance. At the annual Village Flower Show, Lady Belden silently disregards the judge's decision that her rose is the winner, instead announcing the entry of the local station master, Mr. Ballard, named the Mrs. Miniver Rose, as the winner, with her own rose taking second prize. As air raid sirens sound and the villagers take refuge in the cellars of Belden Hall, Kay and Carol drive Van to join his squadron. On their journey home they witness fighter planes in a dogfight. For safety, Kay stops the car and they see a German plane crash. Kay realizes Carol has been wounded by shots from the plane and takes her back to Starlings. She dies a few minutes after they reach home. Kay is devastated. When Vane returns from battle, he already knows the terrible news. Unexpectedly, he is the survivor and she the one who gives her life for Britain. The villagers assemble at the badly damaged church where their vicar affirms their determination in a powerful sermon. We in this quiet corner of England have suffered the loss of friends very dear to us, some close to this church. George West, choirboy, James Ballard, stationmaster and bell ringer, and the proud winner only an hour before his death of the Belden Cup for his beautiful Miniver Rose. And our hearts go out in sympathy to the two families who share the cruel loss of a young girl who was married at this altar only 2 weeks ago. The homes of many of us have been destroyed, and the lives of young and old have been taken. There's scarcely a household that hasn't been struck to the heart. And why? Surely you must have asked yourselves this question. Why in all conscience should these be the ones to suffer? Children, old people, a young girl at the height of her loveliness. Why these? Are these our soldiers? Are these our fighters? Why should they be sacrificed? I shall tell you why. Because this is not only a war of soldiers in uniform. It is the war of the people, of all the people. And it must be fought not only on the battlefield but in the cities and in the villages, in the factories and on the farms, in the home and in the heart of every man, woman and child who loves freedom. Well, we have buried our dead, but we shall not forget them. Instead they will inspire us with an unbreakable determination to free ourselves, and those who come after us, from the tyranny and terror that threaten to strike us down. This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right. A solitary Lady Belden stands in her family's church pew. Van moves to stand alongside her, united in shared grief, as the members of the congregation rise and stoically sing, "Onward, Christian soldiers," while through a gaping hole in the bombed church roof can be seen flight after flight of RAF fighters in the V for Victory formation heading out to face the enemy. Cast: Greer Garson as Kay Miniver, Walter Pidgeon as Clem Miniver, Teresa Wright as Carol Belden, Dame May Whitty as Lady Belden, Reginald Owen as Foley, Henry Travers as Mr. Ballard, Richard Ney as Vane Miniver, Henry Wilcoxon as the Vicar, Christopher Seven as Toby Miniver, Brenda Forbes as Gladys, Claire Sanders as Judy Miniver, Marita Becker as Ada, Helmut Dantine as German Flyer, John Abbott as Fred, Connie Leon as Simpson, Rhys Williams as Horace. Production. Screenplay. The film went into pre-production in the autumn of 1940, when the United States was still a neutral country. The script was written over many months, and during that time the USA moved closer to war. As a result, scenes were rewritten to reflect the increasingly pro-British and anti-German outlook of Americans. The scene in which Mrs. Miniver confronts a downed German flyer in her garden, for example, was made more and more confrontational with each new version of the script. It was initially filmed before the December 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor brought the USA into the war, but following the attack, the scene was filmed again to reflect the tough new spirit of a nation at war. The key difference was that in the new version of the scene, filmed in February 1942, Mrs. Miniver was allowed to slap the flyer across the face. The film was released 4 months later. Wilcoxon and director William Wyler wrote and rewrote the key sermon the night before the sequence was to be shot. The speech made such an impact that it was used in essence by President Roosevelt as a morale builder, and part of it was the basis for leaflets. Printed in various languages and dropped over enemy and occupied territory, Roosevelt ordered it rushed to the theaters for propaganda purposes. There is a parallel story concerning the Dunkirk evacuation. Sub-Lieutenant Robert Owen Wilcoxon of the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve, only brother of Henry Wilcoxon, assisted in the Dunkirk evacuation on the 29th of May 1940, but having helped to get hundreds of Allied troops off the beach to safety in his assault landing craft, he was fatally injured when, after returning to the sloop HMS Bideford to arrange a tow back to Dover, the ship had its stern blown off by a bomb dropped from a dive-bombing German aircraft. This must have been on Wilcoxon's mind during the making of the film. Reception. Critical response. In 2006, the film was ranked number 40 on the American Film Institute's list of the most inspiring American films of all time. In 2009, Mrs. Miniver was named to the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically or aesthetically significant and will be preserved for all time. The film was selected for the following reasons. This remarkably touching wartime melodrama pictorializes the classic British stiff upper lip and the courage of a middle-class English family amid the chaos of air raids and family loss. The film's iconic tribute to the sacrifices on the home front, as movingly directed by William Wyler, did much to rally America's support for its British allies. Box office. The film exceeded all expectations, grossing $5,358,000 in the US and Canada and $3,520,000 abroad. In the United Kingdom, it was named the top box office attraction of 1942. The initial theatrical release made MGM a profit of $4,831,000, their most profitable film of the year. Of the 592 film critics polled by American magazine Film Daily, 555 named it the best film of 1942. Awards and nominations. Mrs. Miniver won 6 Academy Awards in 1943. Sequel and adaptations. In 1943, the film was adapted into an episode of the Lux Radio Theatre. That episode in turn was popular enough to inspire a 5-day-a-week serial, starring radio veteran Trudy Warner on CBS. In 1950, a film sequel, The Miniver Story, was made with Garson and Pigeon reprising their roles. In 1960, a 90-minute television adaptation directed by Mark Daniels was broadcast on CBS, with Maureen O'Hara as Mrs. Miniver and Leo Genn as Clem Miniver.